African American Women Breaking Barriers in the Women's Army Auxiliary Corps by
Isabella Tigas
and Elena Beale. This organization happened in the 1940s during World War II.
In the beginning, there were just 40 African American women, but then in the end, there were approximately 6,520 in the WAAC.
These women broke many barriers over the years, but two of the biggest barriers were gender and racial.
And because of these women, African American women can now be in the military.
One of the jobs these women accomplished was from February 1945 to March 1946. The African American women in the 6,888 Central Postal Directory Battalion sent out and distributed mail from warehouses in England and France. Since there was a lack of manpower and resources, the letters and packages were sitting in warehouses for months.
But these women did much more than just distribute letters and packages. They were the largest African American unit to ever serve overseas. These young ladies sorted and cleared 2 years' worth of undelivered mail for the Americans stationed in Europe.
Between the Army, Navy, Air Force, and Red Cross, there were 7 million people waiting for their mail.
And they did it in less than a year.
African American women could also do other jobs, but they had to break barriers in order to do so.
These jobs included waves, which was a volunteer work, but these women were banned from this job until October 19, 1944.
The first two African American officers for the waves was Harriet Ida Pickens and Frances Wills. They were sworn in on December 22, 1944.
Of the 80,000 waves in the war, there was a total of just 72 African American women.
Another job that they could enlist in was the Coast Guard. This was banned until October 20th, 1944, but only a few actually enlisted.
They could also enlist in the Navy. They dropped their color ban on January 25th, 1945.
The last job and most common was nurses.
More than 500 African American women served stateside and seaside throughout the war.
And on March 9th, 1945, Phyllis Daly became the first African American nurse in U.S. history.
While doing these jobs, they wore uniforms. Now these were not too easy to get. According to Charity Adams, who was the highest-ranked African American woman in the military.
Of the 40 women in the first group of the black women, only 2 people got a uniform the first day we went for uniforms. At the end of about 3 weeks, when the last shoe order came, when another new shoe order came in, we finally got everybody uniform.
As you can see, in order for all the women to get a uniform, it took lots of time.
Even though they had uniforms, they were not respected nearly as much as the white women.
The African American WAAC women got the same Red Cross hotel as the whites, but then the Red Cross announced that the African American women needed to get a different hotel room.
But the commanding officer, Charity Adams, told them, "As long as I am commanding officer, not one member of this unit will ever spend one night here."
And they did not. Charity Adams fought for the same hotel, and she won.
Another incident was when Charity Adams and the rest of the African American women were getting interviewed for positions, and a white male officer did not even look at Adams.
He said, "I don't even know what I'm going to do with all of you." Well, the next day, Charity Adams got promoted to one of the first African American WAAC commanders ever.
The other major incident that happened was when the 6,888th Central Postal Directory Battalion got discriminated by white men while going to their first day of work.
The men were calling them by hurtful names, and some even threw items at them just because they were not the same race or gender as them.
Even though there were many non-supporters of the African American women in the military, there were still many supporters that helped this branch throughout its years.
For instance, African American women were not allowed in the waves until efforts from Director Mildred McCaffrey and Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune helped Secretary of the Navy James Forrestal eliminate that rule, and the first two WAAC officials were sworn in on December 22, 1944. And on June 21, 1943, Frances Payne Bolton, a congresswoman from here in Ohio, introduced an amendment for a nursing training bill to get rid of a racial bias.
Edith Nurse Rogers, a congresswoman from Massachusetts, introduced and established the first Women's Army bill on May 14, 1942.
Even the president was on their side. President Roosevelt's Executive Order 8802 created Fair Employment Practices Commission, which led to ending racial discrimination in the defense program.
These African American women broke racial and gender barriers in the military and changed the country for the better.
And because of them, African American women are now allowed to be in the military.
The WAAC 10 Percenters has changed this country for the better and has inspired young females all across the country. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched, who were so gallant